The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our webinar. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Carmen Godwin. I'm the program manager for the Florida Association of Museums. And this is our webinar on Analyze This, Tracking Success in Social Media. And this is in cooperation with NetWeave Social Networking. I want to thank our partners, Visit Florida and the Florida Department of State Division of Cultural Affairs, as well as NetWeave Social Networking. Just to give you an idea of a couple things I need to go ahead, or housekeeping items, this webinar will be recorded. Additionally, if you have a question, there are a couple ways that you can get it answered. One is that you would just type your question in the question or chat box. If you do that, I will alert Kevin that you have a question, and I'll go ahead. He wants us to ask questions throughout the webinar so that it's interactive. So please feel free to throw your questions in there, and I'll make sure to ask them to Kevin. The other option is on your control panel, there is like a hand waving symbol. And if you press that, then that sort of raises your hand and alerts me that you would like to ask the question. And I will go ahead and take you off of mute, and then you can ask the question to Kevin, and then he'll have an opportunity to address you directly. So those are the two ways that you can ask questions throughout the program. We have a couple polls that we'll do. We have 4 at the beginning. I just ask that you quickly answer those polls. We will have them open for a few seconds and then close them and share the results. And then this way, Kevin has an opportunity to really kind of make sure that he's sort of catering the program to the audience that is here today. In the handout section of your control panel, there is a slide deck available. You can download that directly from your control panel so that you can save that. Anytime during the presentation, you can download that. If you have a hard time with that technology, let me know, and I will make sure that each of you has a copy of that. The survey that we have, we will send out after the program is over. It's a very short survey. It really helps us understand what you got out of the program, as well as determine what programs you'd like to see in the future. So please take a few moments to fill out that survey and give us some feedback. Again, that'll be an email that will come to you after the program. So our speaker today is Kevin McNulty. He is the co-founder and president of NetWeave Social Networking. Kevin has a great deal of experience. He has 10 years of experience in social media management, and that has really given him the skills to be able to provide this type of presentation to us and other organizations throughout the state and nation. He was one of our most highly rated speakers at our conference in Orlando last year. And he actually has recently started helping over the last year FAM with our social media. And I'm sure that any of you who follow us have noticed a big difference in the FAM social media platform. And that's due to Kevin and his crew over at NetWeave Social Networking. So I want to quickly go over the questions. So let me start with the first, and I will launch the poll. Hold on just a second. All right, so on your screen, you should see a poll that reads, how many of you run the social media function at your attraction? So all of these are yes or no questions. If you will go ahead and select if you run the social media function at your attraction. I have 71%. Okay, everybody, the polls are in for everybody. I'm going to close that and share the results. 86% of you run the social media function at your attraction, and 14% do not. All right, so my next poll, I'm going to close that out. How many of you have a staff that runs your social media function for you at your attraction? We got 86% in. Let's give you a few more seconds to answer that. If you have a staff that runs your social media function, yes or no. All right, I'm going to close out the poll now. Share the results. So 17% of you have a staff that runs your function for you. So it sounds like there's some crossover there that you and a staff runs this function, and 83% do not. All right, the next poll is, how many of you have been doing this for more than a year? How many of you have been doing this for more than a year? Yes or no? All right, I'm going to give you a few more seconds to respond. All right, I'm closing out the poll. So 88% of you have been doing this for more than a year. That's great. And then the final poll is, how many of you use a third-party tool like Hootsuite or Sprout? I'll give you a few more seconds to respond if you use a third-party tool like Hootsuite or Sprout. All right, great. Thank you all for responding to that. And we have 67% who use a third-party tool and 33% who do not. So I'm going to hide those results. And at this point in time, I am going to hand the screen over to Kevin. All right, Kevin, I've shared the screen with you. There you go. We can see you great.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for the introduction. Before we get started, I do have to point out that while we love helping the Florida Association of Museums, it is not me. It is one of my staff, Gretchen Rath, who has done the bang up job with those accounts. And I have to say that because she's on this webinar. So I want to make sure she gets the credit where the credit is due. She's been doing a bang up job for you guys.
Thank you, Gretchen.
Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. It sounds like most of you are doing this on your own, and that a lot of you are using third-party tools. So we'll get into some of the concepts here, and then we'll dive into examining analytics and metrics. The first thing I want to talk about is why measure at all? And Peter Drucker once famously said, what gets measured gets done. And that's really the reason why we want to make sure that we're doing what we can to make sure we're being effective. Without a business goal, social media is just a really time-intensive hobby. So everything's got to be tied to a business goal. And when you tie your program to a business goal, then you understand what it is you have to measure, because you have no idea if you're reaching that goal without the analytics. So once we develop a business goal for our social media program, then we know what analytics we have to look at to see whether or not we're achieving that goal or getting close or falling short. And I can't stress enough, even though it's not really the focus of this particular webinar, I can't stress enough the fact that you have to start with a goal. Another famous business quip is to start with the end in mind. When you're making your plans for your social media program, you need to have a clear understanding from the very beginning of the desired behavior that you're going for here? Are we just trying to get people to talk about us? Is brand awareness our goal? We just want as many people as possible to be seeing our content. Are we trying to drive attendance to special events? Are we trying to sell tickets? What is it that we're trying to accomplish here, and then build everything around that? Because without that, you're really just floundering and you're spinning your tires in the mud without getting any place, because you have no idea where it is you're supposed to be going. So I think that's crucial for every social media program. Knowing in advance what you're going to measure is going to inform how to execute your strategy. So let's say our goal that we're starting off with is brand awareness. We get a lot from our clients. A lot of our clients will tell us when we start with them, we're tired of being the best kept secret in blank. And so the goal is brand awareness. We just want people to know that we're here. We want them talking about us online. Well, if that's the case, then the number one measure that I'm going to look for from social media is reach. How many individual users are going to be seeing our content? We have several clients who are museums and history related operations, science related operations. And one of the things that one of the clients that we have is a unit of the Commemorative Air Force that tells the story of the Tuskegee Airmen. It's called the Red Tail Squadron. They have a Mustang, and they have a traveling exhibit with a 160-degree immersive movie. They go to air shows and schools and museums and present this program. Part of their mission is to tell the story of the Tuskegee Airmen to as many people as possible. Social media has helped extend that mission for them. So yes, secondary goals to the social media program is to get people to come out and see us at the stops, to donate, of course, things like that. But the mission is tell the story to as many people as possible. So the more we grow their social media presence, the more people they can tell the story to. So reach is an incredibly important metric for their program, because that is part of what the mission is all about. And so knowing these things in advance informs your strategy. There are things that you can do that say will be highly shareable. And that will increase your reach, because your audience will be sharing it with their audience and be bringing new people in. That may not be as important to you if your goal is to get people to RSVP to a Facebook event, for example. So knowing what it is that you're going to measure becomes incredibly important in the planning process. So before we even get into what analytics are and how to measure, I just want to give you some context about why we're doing it at all, because that needs to be part of the conversation from beginning to end. You don't want to just get to the, 4 or 5 months from now, you've been doing social media and you sit down to measure, but you didn't have a plan, you didn't have a goal, you're not even sure which of these numbers are important to you. So always begin with the end in mind. Let's talk a little bit about the difference between analytics and metrics. You may have heard both those terms, and they may seem interchangeable to you. And to be quite honest with you, I'll use them a little bit interchangeably in this webinar, but there is a difference. And the principal difference is actually pretty easy to explain. Metrics will tell you what, whereas analytics will tell you so what. Metrics are simply numbers. They're your key performance indicators. They're your measurements of various variables in your program, but they don't tell you why. Knowing what is useless if you don't know why. And so analytics look at, okay, well, this number went up. What are the likely reasons it went up? How can we test whether or not we're correct? Can we make that number go up more? Or maybe that number went down and we need it to come back up. So analytics will dive into the reasons the numbers are what they are. So part of that is looking at previous data. Part of that is knowing what's going on in your program. I'll give you a great example. We had a client whose reach one month was just completely off the charts, like 10 times what it normally was in any given month. And we were really kind of stumped as to why that was. We're looking at the number, but we have no idea what made it move. So we had to dive in a little bit deeper, and we learned that their post reach, or the reach of the things that they were posting, was the same as it ever was. And so the total reach, which includes check-ins and mentions, was the number that had gone through the roof, whereas their post reach hadn't changed. So that then tells us, okay, well, it's not something we said, it's something somebody else said. And so we kind of dove into that and looked at all of the mentions and the check-ins, and it turned out Nick Walenda had visited the facility, the famous wire walker. And because of that, he had posted some pictures from there, and his fans had seen that. And that's him tagging us and mentioning us is what drove that reach. And so, now that we understand that, we know we can make that happen again if we can invite celebrities to come. But we understood why that number did what it did, and we wouldn't have done that without a little bit more analysis of the data, which is analytics versus metrics. Metrics answer questions like, how many people did we reach? How many impressions did we get on our video? How many clicks did we get on our tweet URL? Whereas analytics answer, are we reaching the users who are our customers, right? The number tells us how many people we're reaching, but we need to analyze that data to figure out if those are people who really could be our customers. Is our video creating conversation among prospects? We need to look at secondary performance characteristics of the video to understand what effect it's having, not just how many views there were. Or how many clicks are converting into sales. Maybe you have your museum shop on your website. You have an e-commerce component. Are we able to move people to that? And are they then converting into sales, or are they going to the link and never going any farther? These are the things that you dive into to kind of analyze what these numbers actually mean. And again, as Carmen said, ask questions throughout. I'm not a wait to the end kind of guy for questions. So if you have questions on anything that we're covering at any point, raise your hand and get on the mic, or type it into the chat box, and Carmen will stop me from droning on, and we'll be happy to answer your question. Metrics describe kind of the current state. So they can tell you what's going on now. They can tell you what's going on in the past. Metrics alone cannot tell you what is going to happen in the future. Analytics can do that. So by analyzing that data, we can get a glimpse kind of into at least the near-term future, if not a little longer term. It's not always accurate, and there's only so much extrapolating you can do, but it can give you an idea of new markets that you might be able to pursue. Maybe you notice a particular demographic on your social media is changing rapidly. Maybe you're getting a younger audience. That might inform a change in strategy, or maybe some additional posts that you can make to address that audience. Maybe that informs a program that you can be putting on at your museum. You know what they're engaging with in social, so what they're interested in. So maybe let's put a program like that on and see if we can get some of them to come in and visit. So it can tell you about how to acquire new customers. Where are these people coming from that we're reaching on our social media? And have we tried to reach that group in the real world in any way? Which existing markets should we grow? We know that posts about a particular program blow up on social media. Maybe we should be doing more of that. Which product should we develop? Which customers are most likely to buy? We may have a base of supporters that we know we can count on for donations, but they may or may not be the same folks who might buy a ticket or buy an item in our online gift shop. And we may be discovering new ways to package that or to sell that. Maybe we're finding from social media that people are interested in a particular topic or program, and we don't have anything like about that in the online store, right? So there's all kinds of things that make the data that you collect from social media and the analysis that you do on it relevant to the business at large. And that just brings back home the point that this really needs to be a part of an overall strategy. Social media doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's great that you have social media reach and that you've got fans who are willing to interact, but until you can make that fit into the context of the larger operation, a couple things happen. One, you're underutilizing the impact of social media, and two, depending on who you have in your organization and what their existing knowledge and understanding of social media is or their comfort level, they may think that what you do is not valuable to the organization. And when you can come back and produce these kinds of results and inform what the organization does at every level by giving them this analysis, now you're proving your worth with what you're doing with the social media campaign. So all of these things can be vitally important to a business.
Hey, Kevin, I do have one question that's just popped up. Okay, I'm just going to read it to you. Are analytics the sort of thing you have to extrapolate, whereas metrics are pretty easy to read? I ask because I use social media in my work and it always feels like an experiment.
Yeah, well, social media, it can feel that way. It's actually a great place to experiment. But yeah, so analytics is there's metrics are flat science, right? It's flat data science. You have values that are assigned to variables, and it's pretty easy to measure. Analytics is a little bit art. There will be people that tell you it's all science driven, but sometimes you have to apply intuition and test theories. But analytics are actually the source for your experimentation. So, you may have an idea about why a number went up, but you may not know for sure, or there may be more than one reason. And so you design an experiment. Okay, let's try this again. Maybe our posts, we had a post really blow up at 8 at night, even though most of the time we post around noon. So the hypothesis is there's an audience later at night who's ready to engage with us who we might not be reaching. So how do we test that? Let's post not the same thing, because we never want to do that, but let's post two things that are very similar to each other, and we'll try one at lunch and we'll try one in the evening, and we'll see. We'll make them both photographs, so the type of post doesn't matter. We'll make them on the same topic. We'll get roughly equivalent photographs. One isn't really more eye-catching than the other. And then we'll post one at noon and we'll post one at 8. And let's see what the audience does. And then if they respond, if the later audience responds, now we've got an idea that maybe we're off about the time of day we're posting. Let's start posting more in the evening and see if the numbers as a whole come up. So the analysis of the data that metrics gives you, that analysis can be based on experience and intuition and be the source of your experiment. And because of that, that's why I say there's a little bit of art to it. It's not all straight science, even though we try to be scientific in the methods that we apply. Hope that answered your question. If not, let Melinda know, or excuse me, let Carmen know, and she'll stop me again.
Okay, that's great. I do have one more question since we're. What have you found to be the most compelling? Good photos, the time of a post, or hashtags? Thinking here about Twitter and Instagram.
Okay. So my answers are always, if you've ever been to one of my things before, you know this already, but my answers are always start with it depends. So a super good photo can blow it up much better than a hashtag. And what was the other thing? I'm sorry. Photos, hashtags,
Photos, hashtags, and the time of a post.
the time of day. I've seen any one of those things trump the other two. So I wouldn't say that that it's always A that's most important. It's really a matter of knowing your audience. A great picture can overcome a time of day issue, and you might get away with not putting any hashtags at all on it. Conversely, catching the right hashtag can really make a post. You know, we were just discussing, Gretchen and I were discussing with a different client yesterday some of their most successful posts, and we just happened to catch. We had a topic that we had a photo that was just perfect for a certain hashtag, and by using that hashtag, that particular post blew up. But if you were applying that same hashtag to a post that didn't really apply to that hashtag, the hashtag's not going to save you. So unfortunately, there's no one answer that's right all the time. If this was easy, we wouldn't need companies like NetWeave. Uh, but I would say of those three things, content drives everything. So quality pictures are more often than not the most compelling piece of that formula, but you can't discount the other two.
Thank you so much. I have one more. We're getting a lot of questions, so this is great.
That's good.
Is it a good idea to stay within the high value time Facebook provides in insights, or is it worth playing around with post times?
It's always worth, okay, it depends. Sorry, had to get that out of the way. I feel like it's always valuable to try different times of day, because here's the thing that the Facebook insights won't tell you. They will tell you when your audience is online in the highest numbers. They will not tell you whether or not those are the fans who like to engage you. So I have several examples in our 75 clients where Facebook tells me the majority of their audience is on at 9 p.m., but I get much more interaction from the group at lunchtime. When we post around 11:30 in the morning, we get much more engagement than if we post at 9 at night. Generally speaking, there are more people on Facebook in the evening, but they're busy doing lots of things. Whether or not your post will stand out in that sea of activity, that you don't know. So you can tell from the graph when they're on, but you only know from experience when they engage. And the engagement is the biggest part of the formula, because that's what drives the newsfeed algorithm. And we'll talk about the newsfeed algorithm in a little bit. But so even if you have an established pattern that's working for you, you know that lunchtime is the time you get the most interaction, you still don't want to post all of your posts at lunch. You still want to try different times of the day, because one, things change and you never know. And two, there may be people who only check their Facebook in the evening. And if you only ever post at lunch, you have zero chance of ever reaching them. So we continue to play around with it, even though we pretty quickly establish in the first few months, we can pretty quickly establish when our highest engagement occurs. And it may be different times of the day for different days of the week even. We know that on Saturday, it's a little late. Even if we have a good lunchtime crowd on Saturday, that time might move up to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, because people sleep in and do other things. And they don't have to worry about if they're on lunch at work to check. So I would say continue to experiment with different times on different days, and look for the pattern in your post metrics that shows you the best engagement and reach overall.
Thank you so much.
Sure. All right, so now that we know the difference between analytics and metrics, I want to dive a little bit into the vocabulary of what we're going to be talking about, because I'm going to use several terms you may or may not be familiar with, but each has a distinct meaning that I want to make sure we're all on the same page. So the first thing I want to talk about is likes versus reach. Likes or follows, if you're on Instagram or Twitter, Facebook, with 2.5 billion users, they're the 800-pound gorilla. So they're the one thing. All of our clients have a Facebook page. They may not have a Twitter or Instagram. So a lot of my examples are kind of Facebook centered because of that. So on Facebook, their page likes, on other platforms, their follows. But the point here is that this is the most public metric because it's the one thing everybody can see, whether they're a page admin or not. And a lot of times when you run the page and your boss is not an admin on the page and they don't really understand what social media does, but they can see that number of likes, they get very focused on it. And it's not, in my opinion, the most useful number. In fact, I think it's one of the least useful numbers for determining the success of your social media program. Now, they do have some value. There's, the whole concept of social proof, right? If you have lots of likes, it seems like you're popular. But the point there is it only seems like that, because where the real proof in the pudding is reach. So as opposed to likes, reach is the number of people who see your content. And in Facebook, reach has the specific definition. These are unique users who have seen your content at least once during whichever period you're measuring. And that to me is much more important. So I'll give you an example. We do the Sun and Fun Air Show. They're second largest air show in the country. They're right here in Lakeland, Florida, coming up this spring, as a matter of fact, if you're interested in airplanes. And they have a Facebook page with about 95,000 page likes. And that's pretty good, right? That sounds like a pretty popular page. During the week of the show, though, we reach 2 million people just on Facebook. So there's a big difference between 95,000 and 2 million. And which number do you think the sponsors care about? Right? 2 million reach is a number you can take to sponsors and say, hey, you sponsor the show, we'll give you X amount of mentions on social media, and we reach 2 million people during that week. So, I don't care if you only have 3 likes on your page if you're reaching 3 million people. Conversely, I don't care if you have 3 million likes if you're only reaching 3. We've had that opposite problem where we've had clients come to us and say, we're not doing well with our page. We don't know what we're doing wrong. We want you guys to fix it. And we look and they have 7,000 fans on their page and their average post is reaching a dozen people. So it really didn't matter that you had this big like number if you're not reaching anyone, right? So to my mind, reach is the single most important of the variables. Now, again, different goals have different key performance indicators, and reach may not be the most important thing in some applications. But after 10 going on 11 years of doing this, and tying it to all kinds of different business goals, reach is really where I think the rubber meets the road. Now, not every platform gives you reach. Twitter doesn't give you reach. They only give you impressions, and we'll talk about the difference between reach and impressions. And though likes and reach tend to trend together, as your likes go up, your reach goes up. It's not always necessarily one-to-one. So, it's good to see your likes going up, but likes in isolation are meaningless, I think, to most folks' business goals. Unless your business goal is strictly you want to have the biggest fan page, you want to have the most likes or the most follows. If that's your goal, then absolutely that's your most important metric. But for actually getting something done, I think reach is the most important.
Kevin, somebody's asking how reach is measured, how you measure it.
So reach is measured, and I can speak for Facebook and Instagram because they're both owned by Facebook, so I know they both count the same way. Reach used to be measured. So if you've been doing this for a long time, and I know most of you have been doing it for more than a year, if you were doing this in 2008, or excuse me, not 2008, 2018, and you compared your 2018 reach numbers to your 2019 reach numbers, your reach went down, almost certainly. And if it went up, it should have gone up more, but they changed the way that they measured reach. So reach used to be measured by if somebody signed in, then Facebook loads 50 stories to their news feed off the top of their head. And by the way, the newsfeed algorithm does such a big job of gatekeeping. Most Facebook users could have anywhere around 1,500 different stories to load, and Facebook picks 50. So that's quite a bit of gatekeeping going on. But anyway, they load 50 stories in, and then you scroll through them. If you get down to the bottom, they'll load 50 more, right? They used to count reach as being loaded to the device. And it didn't matter if the person had ever scrolled down far enough to actually see the content. They changed that in, I want to say, March or May of 2018. So it was right around there you saw the change take effect. And now reach counts when the content is drawn on the screen. So you actually have to scroll up enough to actually have put it across your device's screen, and then it is counted as reach. I think the new way of counting is much more accurate, but because we're counting a subset of what we used to count, by definition, reach had to go down. Now, if you were in a growth phase, your reach still might have gone up because on net, you were gaining fans and gaining exposure fast enough to overcome the change. But they did significantly change the way that they measured reach. And I think the modern measurement is much more accurate. We still can't count whether or not somebody's eyeballs registered what they saw and put it into their brain. Facebook analytics aren't that good yet, though I wouldn't be surprised if that's somehow coming. But we at least know that it crossed their screen. And, you know, people will say, well, you don't know if they actually read it or whatever. And I'm like, look, this is getting a lot closer than how many cars drive by a billboard in a day. So I think it's probably the closest actual measurement of impact that we have in marketing.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so now we mentioned reach versus impressions. So let's get into that. You'll see impressions in these metrics as well. And as I said, Twitter doesn't give you reach, it only gives you impressions. So what's the difference? Reach is the number of individual users who've seen the content, regardless of how many times they've seen it. Whereas impressions is the total amount of times it's been seen. So if I see a piece of content one time or 10 times, that would be a reach of 1, but 10 impressions. Does that make sense? So impressions are the total amount of times it's been seen. Reach is the number of people who've seen it. If you take impressions and divide it by reach, you'll get the average number of times a piece of content is seen by one of your fans. And so what we look for there, especially when we look at advertising, reach and impressions become very important to us when we look at social advertising, because if somebody sees an ad one time, that's not enough to register. That's marketing 101. People need to see your ad multiple times. And so we want to make sure that our targeting and our budget are constructed in a way which gives us an audience that's seeing our ad at least 3 or 4 times. So if we see that we have a reach of 1,000, I want to see 3,000, 4,000 impressions. So that's the important difference between reach and impressions. And that's why reach to me is a much more important metric, because it's how many different people have seen our stuff, right? If we're showing stuff 100 times to one loyal fan, okay, that's great, but that's not as useful as showing stuff 10 times each to 10 fans. And so that's reach versus impressions. Another thing that you'll see is reactions versus engagement. Reactions are the category of engagement where, like on Facebook, you can like something, you can love it, you can make it a favorite on some applications, you can give it a little heart on Twitter. Reactions are a subset of engagements. So reactions is not the end all be all when you're looking at engagement, because engagements also include clicks, shares, comments. So reactions is a subset of engagement, and while they're important, engagement overall is the most important thing. Now, what type of engagement is the most valuable? From the purposes of the newsfeed algorithm on Facebook, the algorithm which chooses how far your content gets and who it gets shown to, the most important thing used to be a share. If you could get a share, excuse me, that was much more valuable than any other type of engagement, and it weighed the most in the formula that the newsfeed algorithm uses for determining if content is hot. Back in the fall of 2018, I think it was 2018, when Mark Zuckerberg announced that, Facebook should be about conversations with you and hearing from your friends. They made a lot of significant changes to the newsfeed algorithm, and one of those was to increase the value of comments. So now, depending on what you're doing, the comments could be even more important than the shares. And again, the newsfeed algorithm changes all the time, and it's quite the moving target. Trying to figure out the newsfeed algorithm and trying to game the newsfeed algorithm is not going to work, because it keeps changing. It changes faster than you can figure it out. And gaming the system in social media never works in the long term. What works in the long term is producing great content fans want to see. The newsfeed algorithm will always reward that. So that's where you should concentrate. While I have indicated that reach is what I think to be the most important variable, because of the effect that engagement has on the newsfeed algorithm, engagement drives reach. So engagement becomes very important to you as well. So at the end of the day, reach may be the thing you're most concerned with, but how do you make reach go up? By providing prompts to engage. And that can be as simple as just asking questions in your post. The example I use all the time there is we have a customer who flies a historic World War II bomber. And we're fortunate enough that lots of people love to take pictures of it and send us pictures. So we get a lot of user-generated content. Somebody sent us a beautiful black and white image of the plane, and we posted it. And I could have just said, look at this great photograph that John Smith sent us. And it would have gotten a fair number of reactions, and it probably would have even gotten some shares because it was a good picture, but there was no reason to comment to that. There's no reason to talk back. So we said, look at this great picture that John Smith took of Fifi, is the name of the aircraft. Do you think Fifi looks better in black and white or color? Just adding that simple sentence onto the end blew that post up. And it's a great way to get engagement. So when you write your post, reread it, and not just proofread it, but reread it, and then think of it as a Facebook user and say, okay, so what? Why would I interact with this? Why would I comment? If there's no reason for me to comment, you're not done writing the post, right? So include those engagement prompts, because engagement ultimately drives reach. Another term you'll hear bandied about a lot is KPI. KPI stands for key performance indicator. And a lot of people will tell you, well, here's the KPIs for social media. And again, me being the it depends guy, a KPI is whatever you say it is. It's whatever metric is the most important for your particular business goals. So while reach is a huge KPI for me and most of what I do, again, if you're just trying to be the biggest Facebook page, maybe reach isn't a KPI for you. Maybe likes is a KPI for you. So, you know, a KPI, and you'll hear this term a lot, not just in social media, just in business intelligence and analytics in general. KPI. My point here is, one, just to tell you what the acronym means, and two, to let you know that just because somebody else says it's key does not make it so for you. The key performance indicators for you are whatever ones support your business goals. Okay, that concludes our vocabulary lesson, and now I'm going to dive into the analytics of some of the platforms. If we have time, we may go ahead and do a little bit of live demo so I can show you a few tips and tricks. Don't know if we'll have time. Depends on how fast we can get through this and what questions that you have. But I am going to show you some examples. And unfortunately, the format being what it is, the examples are a little bit of an eye chart, but we'll do the best that we can. We're going to go through each platform in turn. And we're going to start with, of course, the 800-pound gorilla and go through some Facebook analytics. So besides being the most popular platform, Facebook offers the best tools. Well, the best, I think Google gives them a run for their money. And we'll get into Google a little bit later. But between Google and Facebook are worth what they're worth because of the data that they have. Yes, they're advertising platforms and they make good money at that, but the way they make good money with their advertising is having data on their users. And so Facebook gives you some great tools in Facebook Insights. If all you have is a Facebook page, you don't even need third-party reporting tools. The reporting tools you get in Facebook are terrific. And I think that you should be going into your insights at least once a week. If you're only looking at it at a monthly basis, there are most of the measurements. If you look at the measurements on a weekly basis, it can be a little bit like weighing yourself every day, right? You should only weigh yourself once a week because daily weight fluctuates and it can get discouraging, but overall you're looking at trends. And it's the same way with insights. There are certain insights like reach for one particular week. I wouldn't obsess if your reach is down versus last week. It could be up again the next week. I'd look at reach on a monthly basis and look for trends. But I am a fan of going into insights at least once a week and looking at your individual posts to see what's resonating with the audience. And we'll go into how to do that. But I think that it keeps your finger on the pulse of what the audience likes when you're looking at your posts on a weekly basis. Again, when you're looking at the insights, I focus on reach. You may focus on something different, but I don't want to beat a dead horse. But you want to be checking your posts and statistics for reach and engagement. And again, one may be more important to you than the other based on your goals, but what you're looking for is look at the posts that are performing the best, find out what they have in common, right? Are they all videos? Are they all pictures? Are they all about a particular topic? Are they all at a particular time of day? And then go to the other extreme. Look at your posts that did the worst. Look for commonalities there. When you figure that stuff out, you take the stuff that performs the best and do more of that. Find the stuff that performs the worst and stop doing that. That's the ultimate formula for success in social media. Do the stuff that works and stop doing the stuff that doesn't. But the way you figure that out is by checking your insights on a weekly basis. Also, check your audience demographics to make sure they match your target demographics. you should, as a business, have a solid idea of the demographics of your audience. So as a museum, you should know the general gender mix, the general age mix, cultural components that make up the body of people who come through your door, who donate the most, who attend the most. You should already have that worked out. What you want to do is make sure that your social media matches up with that, if that's your target. Or maybe you have a target of, we know who's in here, and our target is to reach people who aren't in here. So let's say we know our audience is older, and we want to reach a younger crowd. That's a very, very common issue that clients come to us with, is we want to reach a younger audience. So then you want to make sure that your social media demographics focus younger than your current key demographic. So that's why I refer to it as a target demographic. Make sure it matches with what you want to be doing, not necessarily what you have right now. What you have right now is what you want to be doing, then your current demographic and target demographic are the same. And you just want to make sure Facebook matches that. But I imagine that a lot of you are trying to figure out ways to reach new audiences. And so make sure your social media demographics meet that target. You can actually download data on Facebook. The Insights product on Facebook, if you go in via Facebook and look at all the various numbers they give you, that's an aggregation of about 60 or 70 different variables. But you can download the data to get all 300 variables. It's a multi-sheet Excel workbook, and it can lead to paralysis by analysis if you don't know what to do with all those numbers. But you can really drill down into some stuff with the downloaded data. So let's take a look at what the Insight screen looks like. This is one of our clients. We have permission to show their numbers. And so this is the overview screen. So when you click on Insights at the top of the screen, when you click on Insights, this is the screen you get to. Now, you'll see that the time period up here, and I don't know, you probably can't even see my arrow. So Carmen, do you know if there's a way I can point to something on a slide with this?
I do not know. I mean, I can actually see it. No, I can see it. I can see your arrow.
Oh, can you? Okay, good. Yeah, because the little showing main screen preview doesn't show the arrow. Okay.
I see it.
So right here in the page summary, the default, when you first click on Insight, this defaults to 7 days. I usually will click the pull down and pull it down to 28 days. Again, like I say, I like to look at the wider trends when you're talking about some of this high level data. And so even though the default period is 7 days, you can pull it down to 28 days. I talked about exporting the data. You do that from right here. So the export data function will export up to 180 days of page data or individual post data. So it will download every post for the last 180 days and show you the performance on it. So just try that. If you haven't tried it before, just try that once just to see the kind of data that you get. And see if some of those things that you get downloading the data as opposed to just looking at your Insight screen actually give you any additional information. When you're in Insights, you get a unique left nav that will let you dive into things more deeply. But I do want to go over a couple of things on this page, and I just want to make sure, hold on a second, there we go. The one thing, because I'm the reach is the most important statistic guy, the first thing I'm always looking at is this post reach. Post reach as opposed to total reach, we kind of covered this earlier, but just so you know, post reach is the reach of things we have actually posted. It is not counting check-ins or mentions that other people have done. So this is how many people have seen our original content. And that's a very important number to me. So that's the one I'm always looking at every time I dip into insights here. Also engagement, because engagement drives reach. So we're looking at that as well. To give you some context, if you divide engagement by post reach, that'll give you engagement rate. The average engagement rate on Facebook is about 3.6%. We don't consider engagement good for one of our clients until it hits 7. 7 is acceptable to us. But of course, we like to see it much bigger as well. So here we have, 800,000 out of 2 million. That's I'm not going to do the math in my head because I'm not good at that, but that's a pretty sizable engagement rate, much higher than 10. So those are the things that I kind of look at in this overview screen here. Now, the other things that you can dive into down this left navigation, again, a lot of people like to look at likes because, again, it's the most public and it's the one your boss constantly is asking you to explain. You can look at the net page likes here, and you can set a date range here. So before we could only pick 7 or 28 days, but when you get into some of these interior screens, now you can start setting a longer time period. You can't go back forever. It only saves the data. I want to say 18 months, but you can obviously increase this quite a bit longer than 28 days. And as you increase the date range, you'll see these graphs change shape as well. So this graph at the top will show you the activity on a daily basis. So we had a big spike of new page likes right there, and then it kind of came back down a little bit. The net page like will show you your total page likes over time. And again, it's whatever time scale that you're setting here. So what you want to see here, even if it's a shallow grade like this is, you want to see generally going up, right? You want to see us ending stronger than we're starting. If it's starting to go down, you have problems. And then down here in the detailed by day graph, you're seeing that broken down now, not only just the net likes that you see up here, but you'll see where those likes came from and where the unlike and how many unlikes you have. You'll always have a few people unliking your page for no other reason than people stop using Facebook, or in some cases with a lot of our museum customers who have older demographics, sometimes people die. You can actually see the reasons for the unlikes by clicking and dragging across any of the dates in this chart. And then it'll show you the reasons for likes, and then there's a toggle you can switch to unlikes and see the reason. And you'll see deactivated or memorialized accounts. Those are people who have either quit Facebook or died. You'll sometimes see suspicious account removal as a reason. Facebook actually winds up removing 75 million accounts a day that are fraudulent. So you might see that as well, but you'll always have some number of unlikes. What you want to be careful of is that you don't have any spikes in the red graph. If the red graph stays relatively even, and it's relatively small, I mean, we have almost 300,000 fans on this page, and the unlike graph never makes it to 10. So clearly I'm not worried about any of that. But if I were to see a sudden spike in unlikes, then that would be a sure sign that I did something the audience didn't like. So I'd want to find out what I posted that day and figure out what I had done and to not do that again.
Hey, Kevin, we have a question.
Sure.
With the recent-ish exodus from Facebook, do you still think it is a viable tool, or are you looking at other platforms?
It depends. a lot of people say things like recent exodus from Facebook, but Facebook is still growing. It's not growing as fast as it was, but it's still growing. So if people are exiting, they're not doing it in large enough numbers or fast enough numbers to keep Facebook from growing. A platform that is stalled out is Twitter. Twitter has been hovering at 370 million users for almost 18 months. Snapchat has been hovering at about 300 to 320 million for 9 or 10 months. Those platforms aren't growing. Facebook is still growing. So I think the death of Facebook has been prematurely reported. I think the watershed for me in demographics is kind of age 35, right? So if they're 35 or over, they're absolutely still on Facebook. If they're under 35, then you might start looking at Instagram as a more viable tool to reach a younger audience. And there are some other platforms that are a younger demographic as well, but harder to use as a business, like Snapchat and TikTok. But here's the thing. A lot of people make a lot of noise that they're going to quit Facebook, but every complaint I've seen so far has been on Facebook, right? I'm getting rid of Facebook, but they're still there a week later. So I think that it's not people leaving Facebook. I think that it's as the Facebook group ages, they're not being replaced as fast with young users. Facebook just last week turned 16 years old. A lot of people don't realize it's been around that long, but Facebook started out being for kids, right? For the first 2 years, you had to have a .edu email address to even get a Facebook account. But those kids have all grown up, and a lot of them have stayed on Facebook. And you say, and you hear people say, "Oh, kids are getting rid of Facebook." Kids aren't getting rid of Facebook. Kids were never on Facebook. As that population ages, they're not being replaced with teenagers, right? So it used to be the demographic used to be late teen to early 20s. Well, all those people now are in their 30s and closing in on their 40s. And they're not being replaced as quickly with younger audiences, but they are being added to from older audiences. The fastest growing demographic on Facebook right now is still 55 and over. So, so yeah, Facebook is still an absolutely viable tool. And in fact, depending on the audience you're trying to reach, it's vital. If you're a business to consumer business where you have to talk to consumers and your consumers are all over 35 years old, absolutely you have to be on Facebook. Not the end all be all. If you're trying to reach young folks, Facebook is not a good play for that. A lot of younger people do have Facebook accounts, they just don't use them as much. So even now, you'll find teenagers have Facebook accounts because they are in a class that has a Facebook group. So that's the only thing they use Facebook for. They're not really connecting with their friends like they would on Instagram or TikTok or Snapchat. So that's a big old it depends, but I don't think there's a mass exodus of Facebook. The growth has slowed, but it has not reversed itself. It still continues to trend upward. About 2/3 of everybody in the United States has a Facebook account.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Okay, so looking at some more Facebook analytics, in the left-hand navigation, the one is near and dear to my heart is reach. So I'm frequently poking my nose into the reach graph here. Again, you can set whatever date range that you like, and then you're seeing your post reach and your total reach. And I explained to you the difference between those two. There are a few graphs that actually are jammed in between these two, but these are the two that are most important, so I put them together in the image. And these tell you a couple of different things. We explained the difference between post reach and total reach. Also, you can click over here on organic and paid, and you can see what your average post reach was organically for this period versus the period before. whenever you see comparative data in Facebook, it's comparing to the period before. So if you're looking at a week, it's comparing it to the week before. If you're looking at a month, it's comparing it to the month before. If you're looking at a quarter, it's comparing it to the quarter before, etc. So it's not a year-over-year comp. You have to play with your date customization over here in order to get those numbers manually. But it will show you if your average post reach is going up or down. So that can be a useful tool as well. Another one that I go into all the time on the left nav, it's kind of buried under the arrow here, but posts. Now, somebody was making reference earlier to the optimal audience time that Facebook gives you. This is where you get that. So it will show you when your fans are online. It'll show you by the types of posts they consume and top posts from pages you watch. By the way, I'm going to back up a second. Right under this graph, there's a list of pages that you can compare yourself to. You can enter any number of pages in there, and those are what Facebook considers the pages you watch. It will rank them by number of fans, but it will also show you their top posts and their engagement for that week. So that can be good data. And then when you wind up looking at it in this context, you can see how their audiences compare with your audiences. So that can be valuable as well. But again, this shows you when they're online, not necessarily which groups engage the most. So this graph is kind of weird for the Commemorative Air Force because it's kind of an international page, so it crosses several time zones. There's a high retiree population in it, so it's probably a little bit earlier in the morning than you'd see on most pages. Most page graphs on this section, especially if most of your audience is in the same time zone as you, most of them look kind of like a whale. They have a tail up here that drops down at 3 a.m. It gets very shallow, and then it slowly starts coming back up. There may be a hump around lunchtime, and then it gets bigger and bigger until about 9 o'clock, and then it starts falling off again. That's very common. By and large, again, every audience is different. There are always exceptions, but by and large, you'll find the most engagement comes around either lunchtime, dinner time, or after kids go to bed. So somewhere within an hour on either side of noon, within an hour on either side of 6, and within an hour either side of 9. Generally, we try to go earlier than that, so that when people hit at those peak times, our post is already in their newsfeed. And again, that's very general. I have plenty of exceptions to that. Because we have these high retiree populations, posts at 8 and 9 in the morning do very, very well on some of our pages. That would be absolutely not true for the majority of our pages. That would be a terrible time to post for most of our pages. But every audience is different, and if you're not checking this, you don't know what your audience is like. And that's the key. The key to everything is knowing your audience. That drives your content because you know what they like. That drives when you post because you know when they like it. You have to know your audience. And this is where you can get to know them. So you see your time of day, your days of the week, and then you also get your post metrics. And you can scroll down on this and you can drill back forever. Well, probably not forever, but more than you're willing to sit there and do in a day, I assure you. And this will show you in chronological order the posts that you've made, and you'll get to see their reach and engagement. So what you're looking for here is the posts that got the best reach and engagement. What do they all have in common? And the ones that got the lowest, what did they all have in common? And this is where you find that. The other thing I like to, I'm kind of skipping around in here because I'm just showing you the highlights. These are the things when I go in and check my insights, these are the things I look at. I look at likes, reach, posts, and people. So the last one here is in the left nav is labeled people, and this is where you get your demographics. You can sort your demographics across the top here. You can see the folks who like your page, the folks who follow your page, and the difference between fans and followers. You can follow a page without liking it. Let's say you want to keep an eye on your competition, but you don't want people to see on your profile that you like your competition, right? So you may follow a competitor's page without liking it. Conversely, you can like a page, but maybe it's a business owned by a friend of yours, and you don't really care about their content, and frankly, you're tired of seeing it in your news feed. So you unfollow them so that you don't see their content anymore, but you don't want to not give your friend your support, so you don't unlike the page, you just hide their content. And so you can be in one category but not the other, but I'll tell you 90% of the time there's a huge overlap and you really don't have to worry about the difference. You can also look at this in terms of the people you're actually reaching and the people who are engaging or talking back. I think it's a very informative exercise to look at your fans and then click over to the people that you're reaching. It's very interesting to see how the demographics change. Generally speaking, this page is not very typical, again, because it's got an older demographic. Typically, you will see a much more normal distribution where the 35 to 44 and 45 to 54 are the biggest groups, and then it comes back down in sort of a bell curve. That is not what this page does. Also, normally you'll see more females than males. Facebook itself is about a 55-45 mix. But again, this is an aviation page, so it's going to skew to, it's a World War II aviation at that, so it's going to skew to an older audience and it's going to skew more male. But it's interesting to see how fans change when you look at fans to reach. Generally speaking, again, this page is an exception, but generally speaking, when you look at your fans, when you switch from fans to reach, you'll notice that the gender division gets more balanced. Usually you'll have many more females than males will like a page. I don't know if that's commitment issues with guys, I don't know, but women tend to like more pages than men do on Facebook as a whole. But when you switch over to reach, you'll see the gender balance get much more even, because now you're talking about content that is being shared. And when you share content, you share it with all your friends, and your friends generally have a gender balance. You're not generally friends with just women or just men. So you'll see the fan to reach change to be more gender balanced because of that. You'll also generally see the fans to reach change to a slightly younger audience. The reach gets a little bit younger because younger people tend to use the platform more often, so they're more likely to encounter your content. So that's a very normal thing that you see going back and forth between your fans and your reach. But this is where I'm telling you to make sure that this matches your target demographic. If our target demographic were a younger audience, this demographic might not support that effort. It does in fact support that effort, I can tell you, because when we started, we had almost zero in the 18 to 24 bracket and very little in the 25 to 34 bracket. So having anything in these is a win for us at this point. But those are the kinds of things that you have to understand what you're doing and understand what your goals are in order to interpret this data. This will also show you your most popular countries, cities, and languages. Especially here in Florida, you may want to take a look at your language breakdown. Maybe you have a significant amount of Spanish speakers in your audience. If so, you might try an occasional post in Spanish. If you have more than 10,000 folks on your Facebook page, you have the ability to target your posts. So you can send out a post in Spanish to only people who are using Facebook in Spanish. So you don't freak out any of your English speaking audience going, what is this? But you're showing your Spanish speaking audience how much you appreciate them by giving them a post in their native language. And you'd be surprised how far that goes in terms of building goodwill for your brand. On Sun and Fun, we get visitors from 82 different countries, and we get huge contingents from Mexico, South America. We get a huge contingent from Brazil. And so we make posts in Spanish and Portuguese to just folks who are using Facebook in those languages. And out of the dozens of posts we make during the week of the show, we may only do 1 or 2 in those languages, but just something along the lines of, hey, we appreciate all our Central and South American friends out there here at Sun and Fun. Tell us where you're from. But it's in Spanish, and then we get a list of countries. And just the fact that we did that, people go over the moon, like thanking us for being hospitable and for thinking of them as a fan base. So just something to consider. Also, you want to look at your cities and countries. It is not unusual for a business local to Florida to have a bunch of its local cities in the top cities. But if you get a good tourist component, you may see New York pop up on here. You may see Chicago pop up, or LA, big concentrations of people, probably more New York than LA, because that audience travels to Florida probably more than the audience in California. But, take a look at those as well. Any questions on any of the Facebook analytics?
I do not see any questions popping up, but again, feel free to raise your hand or just type a question into the chat box if you have one. Thanks.
Okay. So let's move on to Twitter. Twitter has a decent set of analytics. That wasn't always true, but a few years ago, Twitter actually bought an analytics company. So Twitter now has a decent set of analytics, although they have made some recent changes that actually reduced the amount of variables now that you'll get to see. We'll talk about that a little bit. But they don't give you reach. It's nothing they have ever counted. So it is just not part of their makeup. You'll have to do with impressions. You'll get impressions, you will not get reach. Excuse me. A lot of the demographic data that they give you were based on third-party match data. And what that means is they have deals with other data clearinghouses, and they'll pass somebody logs into Twitter with the email address joe@aol.com. They pass that email address to their match partner, and their match partner gives them any data that they have on that email address. And so things like occupation or household income or things like that was always being provided on the basis of this match data. Well, not everybody logs into Twitter with the same email address that they use for banking or shopping or whatever. So the matches are never complete. You never get 100% match data. And some of the matches were pretty shaky. Some of the matches were like 24% match. So it could be really dangerous to imagine any trends based on that match data because it's very incomplete data. A lot of those matches are what's going away. So in the age of privacy and the Cambridge Analytica scandal on Facebook, Facebook killed all of its third-party data relationships. So it no longer gets match data from anybody, which made advertising a lot harder. The income match data was so valuable for targeting certain groups of people, but it's gone now. They've replaced it with other things, but not quite as accurate. Well, Twitter is going in that direction also. So they have terminated a lot of their match data. So you're going to see a lot of their demographic stuff going away. Not all, but some. Some things to be aware of in Twitter. So if you've been doing this for more than a year, which most of you have, you'll know that there are 2 different ways that you can retweet somebody. You can use the retweet button, or in your third-party tool of Hootsuite or Sprout, do what's called a quote retweet, where it just basically rebroadcasts the same tweet, and underneath it'll just have a line that it was retweeted by whatever your username is. Or you can go the old-fashioned way before they invented that button, and you could actually just copy the tweet, put it into a fresh tweet of yours with with the letters RT in front to let people know you were retweeting it. And that allows you to make a comment on it. You can add information or give your spin on your reaction to the information, etc. It's important to note that when Twitter counts outgoing tweets, when it shows you how many tweets you've sent in a day, it does not count quote retweets as outgoing tweets. If you did it the old-fashioned way, where you copied it and you put the RT, whether you made a comment or not, but if you did it that way, it does count as an outgoing tweet. But quote retweets do not count as original outgoing tweets for you. Again, you can download data to Excel. If you do that, it enables you to run hashtag searches for certain data, etc. Like if you need to see the tweet performance on all your tweets containing a certain hashtag, and you don't have a third-party tool that does that for you, you can download the tweet data to Excel and then just in Excel run a search for the hashtag and just pick out the tweets and look at the data for just those tweets. You do have lots of third-party tools that exist, especially for Twitter. Twitter has the most generous, what they call API, Application Program Interface, which is how third-party tools talk to the Twitter servers to get the data. Twitter has always had the broadest API, so lots of third-party tools sprung up around Twitter. Hootsuite is one that originally was just Twitter, and then they added Facebook, and then they added other platforms behind it. So most of your third-party tools will do a lot with Twitter and will in fact probably do more with Twitter than they will with any other platform because it has the broadest API. The most restrictive API you might be interested to know is Instagram. It is very difficult to do anything with a third-party tool in Instagram. We're lucky we're even able to schedule posts with things like Sprout, and that's only a recent development in the last 12, 18 months. So Instagram very jealously guards their API. Facebook is really weird about their API. Like certain things they will not let through. So events, anything having to do with a Facebook event will not go through the API. So if you have Sprout or Hootsuite, you can't create an event, you can't tag an event, you can't even post a link to an event in a lot of cases. So that all has to be done natively because of the restrictions through the API. So if you're doing those things, like if you're posting links in your third-party tool, make sure they're working. Go check natively and make sure they're working if it's to an event, because a lot of times you run into a problem with that. But that's tangential. So let's get back into Twitter analytics. So this is what Twitter analytics look like. If you've never dived into your Twitter analytics, the way you get there, there's no button when you go into Twitter. Just log into Twitter and then go to ads.twitter.com. Once you're logged in, when you enter that URL, you go to the subdomain, which involves analytics. And that's where you get all this wonderful stuff. So by default, at the home screen here, you'll see a 28-day summary in the upper section. And again, the comparative data is to the period before. So if you're looking at this 28 days, you're comparing it to the previous 28 days. And it'll show you how many tweets you sent out, how many impressions those tweets have garnered, how many people have visited your profile, how many people have mentioned you, how many followers you have, and how that is tracking over time. When you look at the profile visits versus the impressions that we got, you'll see that there are very few profile visits, and this actually brings up a good point that not really having to do as much with analytics, but a point that I want to make to you guys just in general. Social media is consumed via the news feed. The number of people who actually go to your page or your account to look at things is minuscule. In fact, the data shows on Facebook, for example, once somebody presses the like button on your page, 99% of the time, they will never come back to your page. They will only interact with the posts that show up in their newsfeed. And that's why these newsfeed algorithms are so critical, because nobody's coming looking for your content. You may have a strong, loyal core of evangelists. You know, everybody has that 1% of evangelists that'll carry the water for you, and shout your praises to all who will listen. And they may be coming and looking at it, but by and large, the majority of people are not. So if you look at profile visits on Twitter, or you look at page visits on Facebook, you'll see the number is very low in comparison to your number of reach or impressions. And that's why. So that's why content is so important, and knowing your audience is so important. So on this page, you'll also see your top posts. You'll also see the summary. If you were to scroll down, you would continue on that summary in the right to see your month summary. So the month summary is looking at calendar months, while the 28-day summary is looking at a rolling 28 days from today. So that's the important difference there. If you then move over, instead of a left navigation like Facebook has, Twitter goes with the top navigation. So if we move over on the top to tweets, we can drill down with more detail on how our tweets have performed. We'll see impressions over number of tweets that we've made. We'll see what our top tweets were, and we can look at that by the impressions, engagement, or engagement rate. We can sort by those. We can scroll down under here to engagement. Under the general engagement rate, you'll see graphs for retweets, replies, URL clicks. Those will all be down here. And what you're looking for here when you're checking in is, you know, the impressions, because we don't get reach, and the engagement. Engagement will be lower on Twitter than it will be on Facebook, and Instagram engagement will generally be higher than either of those platforms. That's just the nature of how the platforms work. So don't be surprised if your engagement rate is 1.5% on Twitter. That's actually pretty good. You can also move across the top here to audiences, and it will show you some audience data. Like I said, some of this data is going away. Some of it will remain. The interests is actually data that comes from Twitter, so that will probably stay. You know, they're just looking at the people that they follow and the tweets they engage with to gauge their interests. Gender breakdown, Twitter is much more male in general than Facebook is. So Facebook, generally 55-45 female. Twitter, generally about 65-35 or 60-40 male. And Instagram is about 60-40 female, just to give you an idea. But, you know, you can dive into these tabs and look at their demographics. Consumer behavior is and lifestyle are a lot of the things that are going away, because a lot of that was match data. But you can even look at mobile footprint. You can see the top carriers and the top devices of people organizing your tweets, or looking at your tweets. So that can be helpful as well. And again, here you're looking for patterns and interests. If you see that the majority of your Twitter audience is interested in dogs, then maybe find content that can be related to dogs, and see if you get a better response from your audience for that. So sometimes, you know, this Twitter account is about airplanes. We're not going to have a whole lot of dog content, but it's interesting that a lot of the people who like airplanes also like dogs. So go figure. Question before I go on, questions about Twitter analytics?
Okay. I don't see any questions at this point.
Okay. So let's dive into Instagram analytics. Instagram is owned by Facebook, and you would think that they have owned them long enough to improve their analytics, because Instagram analytics suck. Pardon my French. Instagram will only give you a week's worth of data. So if you don't have a third-party tool that will aggregate that data for you, like Hootsuite or Sprout, there's almost no conclusions you can draw from a week's worth of data. So Instagram analytics are a little weak. But if you have a third-party tool that will look at them every week and add them together for you, it starts to become useful. I just wish Instagram's native analytics were a little bit better. So this is a good case if you have a very active Instagram account, or you're trying to reach an audience under 35 years old, you need to have an active Instagram account. That's when you definitely want to start looking at some third-party solutions for examining your data, because you need something that'll aggregate it for you. Trying to track it manually will make you absolutely crazy and is not a good use of your time. So, excuse me. If you are over 10,000 users on or followers on Instagram, you can put links in your stories. So you can use referral links to see if people are clicking on those for your stories. Referral links are, the technical term for them is a UTM. And I can't even remember what UTM stands for at the current time, but basically they're customized links that tell you where the traffic is coming from. You can make these yourself using a product like Bitly, or most websites have the ability to do it. So if you've ever followed a link that included, the web address, and then it had a question mark and a string of characters after the question mark, that question mark and everything after it is a UTM. So that's telling that website where you came from. So it will tell them if you clicked on a link in their Facebook page, if you clicked on a link in an ad they were showing, whatever. So you can use those kind of referral links to track whether or not people are actually clicking on your stories links. And again, in Instagram stories, you get the ability to get swipe up to get a link. And you can put those links in once you get over 10,000 fans. And again, matching your audience demographic to your customer data, making sure it's in either your present demographic or your target demographic, whatever is important to you there. But you can see by looking at the screens, there's not a lot here. When you look at the insights and first of all, hopefully most of you have been doing this for more than a year, and most of you are using third-party tools. You have hopefully gotten past the part where your Instagram account needs to be a business account. But if you go to your Instagram account and don't see the little 3-bar graph for diving into your analytics, you may not be set up as a business account. You need to fix that right away. But with a business account, you can see these analytics, and you can see the content over the last week. You can see the activity over the last week, and you can see the audience over the last week. And so this is kind of what that looks like. You can see what you've posted. You can click over to activity and scroll down, and you'll see the interactions that you've gotten. You see the reach that you've gotten and the impressions that you've gotten. And again, third-party tool will aggregate this for you over time, so you can figure out some trends to this. If you keep going and you get to the audience, you can see growth, top locations, age, gender, and days and times. So you can right through the days and see when your audience is on. So just like Facebook, this is telling you when they use Instagram. It's not necessarily telling you the people who engage with your content the most. It's just telling you when your audience uses it the most. But again, it's all very similar data. It's just a matter of where to find it. So unfortunately, not a lot of complexity or nuance to Instagram analytics, just more a matter of where to find the things that are common among all these platforms. But does anybody have any question about Instagram? I give these pauses so that I can actually take a drink of my soda. But again, just
Sorry,
please.
there aren't any questions right now popping up. So
Okay. But yeah, please feel free to ask as we go. All right, so let's get into YouTube analytics. You may not be able to produce enough content to really leverage a YouTube channel because to really make a splash in YouTube, you have to be producing content on a very regular basis. I would say for most cases, at least once a week, you have a new video. And a lot of people, especially small operations with not a lot of budget, can't afford to be producing content at that pace. But YouTube does give you some good analytics because YouTube is owned by Google and Google knows their analytics. So they do have some stellar measurement tools. Google's problem, and Facebook is guilty of this to a certain degree as well, but Google's problem is looking at Google Analytics, whether it be YouTube or your website analytics or even your Google My Business listings, it's a little like drinking from the fire hose. They give you so much data, you're not even sure where to start or what to look at. So I tell people, don't get lost in paralysis by analysis. Don't get sucked down a rabbit hole looking at things that in the end don't really matter that much or don't really affect what you do. So it's especially important in this environment to really keep in mind what your KPIs are, because there are tons of different ways you can slice and dice this data. The good thing about YouTube data is it not only shows you the number of views that your video got, but it'll also show you the average amount of time somebody views, and it'll show you where they gave up. If they abandoned your video before finishing it, they'll show you where. And so you may get the idea from looking at abandoned points that, you know what, no matter what the video is about, none of our audience stays with us for more than 5 minutes. So we really don't need to be making 17-minute videos. So let's scale that back a little bit. Those are the kinds of things it can tell you. In fact, one great story I love to tell, a gentleman by the name of Gary Vaynerchuk, who's very big in the social media world. He started off his career basically with a show on YouTube called Wine Library TV. And it was just him talking about, he ran his parents' liquor store business, and it was just him talking about wines. And he'd try 2 or 3 wines, and he'd talk about them for 10, 20 minutes. And Gary has a very unique style. Gary is from New Jersey, and probably if you called Central Casting and said, send me a guy from Jersey, it would be Gary Vaynerchuk. He's very brash, liberally peppers his language with colorful metaphors. He's a very in your face, always about the hustle kind of guy. And that's not something that goes over well with all people. And so Gary tells a story about looking at his YouTube analytics for Wine Library TV, and he could see that he lost a huge number of viewers in the first 30 seconds on every video because his style was just not something they wanted to sit and watch for 10 minutes. But the point he made was, I could have tried to change that to keep those viewers, but then it wouldn't have been me. And I had to be me. In order for social media to work, you have to be sincere and transparent. And if I wasn't me, then everybody would see that, and I'd eventually lose everybody. So even though it killed me to see I was losing 12% of the viewers in the first 30 seconds, and that hurt, I knew eventually I'd lose everybody by trying to become something I wasn't. So these metrics can give you that kind of insight. It'll also tell you where people are coming from to view your videos. So if your videos are embedded in your website or embedded in other people's websites, it can tell you where the inbound traffic is coming from. And you can also use the metrics to test the effects of different things. So you can upload custom thumbnails for your video, for example. So you can try uploading a custom thumbnail that maybe includes a word or two about what's actually happening in the video and see if that gets more people to click on it. test different titles, formats, links. You can test all of that with the YouTube analytics. Does anybody, so I don't know, show of hands or whatever, I know this isn't the best format for this, but is anybody out there running their own YouTube channel? Like not using YouTube to just keep a library of your videos. That's a legit use for YouTube, and that's what most people do. But is anybody actually running a channel where they're trying to get subscribers and produce content on a regular basis? Just say something in the questions section if you are. So it doesn't sound like a lot of people are doing that. Well, I understand.
Everyone's really responding to that one.
Yeah, it's tough to do. It really is tough to do. I'll tell you though, here's a huge opportunity for you. And again, not necessarily having to do the analytics, but a huge opportunity for you on YouTube if you want to access that audience but can't produce the content. Produce a 30-second spot that you can advertise on YouTube with. So here's the way that those pre-roll ads, YouTube calls them true view ads. Here's the way they work. You know, you go to sit down and watch a YouTube video and that ad starts, and then after 5 seconds, you can skip it. Well, if you skip it, that advertiser does not pay for that impression. You have to either watch all 30 seconds or click on it and go visit the link that they're trying to get you to visit. If you don't do one of those two things, that advertiser doesn't pay for that impression. So think of all the free advertising you could be getting on YouTube if you had a good 30-second spot that made a point with a real strong call to action in the first 5 seconds. We find in these advertising campaigns, we get anywhere from 6 to 8 views of at least 5 seconds for every view we wind up paying for. So just in terms of getting your brand in front of somebody's eyeballs, this is a huge opportunity that most people overlook. So YouTube True View ads. Google My Business Analytics. Google My Business is something that is, I think, kind of tangentially social media. You can put posts on it, although they're not interactive, but you do have reviews that people can put on there. So we kind of include it in our scope when we're working with clients, although it's probably not strictly meeting the definition of social media, but it is an important thing for you to do. If you have not claimed your Google My Business listing, that is definitely something you need to go do. So when you go search for your brand on Google, there'll be a box that comes up on the right that has information about your brand. It could have the hours, the name, it'll have a button so that you can click and get directions. It'll have a link to their website, etc. That box is what they call the answer box. And the contents of that answer box is your Google My Business listing. If that box contains, is this your business? That means nobody has claimed that listing and you need to do that. It's vitally important for you to have control over your Google My Business listing. Once you do, you'll get all kinds of good analytics from Google about how people are discovering your business, whether they're discovering you via search, whether they're discovering you via Google Maps. You know, maybe they were searching for something else, but your pin showed up on the map. Maybe they were searching for things to do, and when the map came up, your pin was in there, so they clicked on your pin and looked at your Google My Business listing. It'll tell you that. It'll tell you how many people clicked and asked for directions, and it'll even tell you where most of those people asked for directions from. So we have a client who operates 5 mini golf courses, and so they get a lot of tourism business because a lot of their locations are on the beach, and it's really important for them to know where people are asking for the directions from, because those are the zip codes then that we hit the hardest with advertising. So it's important data to have. Google My Business came about a couple years ago. It used to be called Google Local, but Google My Business is part of an effort that you've seen Google undertake over the last several years to basically steal your clicks. Instead of sending people to your website, they would much rather they stay on Google and look at your Google My Business listing to get their questions answered. So that's one thing. Another thing that they're doing, if you've noticed, they used to send, if somebody was asking for things to do or places to eat or hotels to stay in, they would send you to TripAdvisor or Yelp or Expedia or Booking.com. They don't do that anymore. Now they offer you a way to book that hotel without ever leaving Google. Google a few years ago realized, hey, why are we sending all this business to other people's websites? Why don't we make this a business? 88% of search in America comes through Google. If we could get them to book on Google, we'd be making all that money. And so Google now is the #1 booking engine in the United States. It's no longer TripAdvisor or Expedia. So, Google has undertaken this effort to keep people in their ecosystem, one, so they can show them advertising, but two, so they can get their cut of things like bookings. So all that to say that your Google My Business is an important listing, and it does have important data about how people discover you. It will show you the terms that they use in order to find you, the searches that resulted in your Google My Business listing coming up the most. That can be important for you to understand what keywords people are searching for so that you can optimize your, you can do your search engine optimization on your website, or so that you know what keywords you should be advertising for if you do Google pay-per-click ads. So that information is in there, as well as, of course, all your reviews are in there. Another thing that's in there a lot of people don't realize is any user on Google has the ability to upload a photo of your location, and there's nothing you can do about it. They also have the ability to ask a question about their location, and anyone on Google can answer the question, and you have no say in it. So if you don't know that stuff is going on, if you're not actively managing your listing, that can be hugely important for you, because you need to be, if the picture is irrelevant or not flattering, you need to be flagging those photos as poor quality or not of this location, in an effort to get Google to take those down. You need to be uploading your own beautiful photographs on a regular basis so that they're always at the top. And you need to make sure you're answering those questions with accurate information from the business so that people aren't taking any Google user Jane Doe's word for things that you should have the answer for. So Google My Business is an incredibly important part of the puzzle, and the analytics on it are good and can help you a great deal in figuring out how people are finding your business. Any questions about that?
I have a couple questions in the queue. They are on previous topics. Would you
No
rather
problem.
those, or are you ready?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Okay. The first one is, are there better kinds of images to post on Instagram?
The ones your audience likes. That's really the answer. I wish I had a magic formula for you, but there are the beautiful people of Instagram that do the idyllic photos, and big beautiful pictures always do very well. But every audience is different in what they prefer. I can tell you what doesn't work is images with a ton of text. If you're posting what are essentially flyers on your Instagram account, just stop. They're not doing you any good. When people are, remember that the vast majority of people are consuming your social media on a mobile device, most often a phone. And as they're doing so, they are scrolling through that feed. They are pushing past it with their thumb repeatedly, and they're only stopping when something catches their eye. If what you're posting, and this counts for Facebook or Twitter too, if the images that you're posting are covered in text, they're just going to unconsciously say, oh, ad, and keep scrolling. They do not want to be sold to, right? They want to be connected with. So I can tell you what doesn't work are overly graphic images, and by graphic I don't mean disturbing, I mean using graphics. You know, a lot of text, a lot of graphics, anything that looks like it was constructed in order to market to you, it generally doesn't do well. I will say generally because I have seen exceptions, but not very many of them. So big, beautiful pictures are the way to go. How they're framed or what they're of, that's going to depend on your audience.
Okay, great. And then the second one was for YouTube. Do the ads count for all devices? TV, phone, iPads, desktop?
Yes. The TrueView ads show in all places and they can be skipped in all places. I have a smart TV, we watch YouTube on it, and I have the ability to skip ads on the TV just like I do on my computer or my phone.
Okay, great.
Okay. All right, so lastly, we're diving into third-party tools. There are a lot of specialized third-party tools. There are some that specialize in particular platforms, like Keyhole specializes in Instagram, Tailwind specializes in Pinterest. But there are more well-rounded tools that give you more options. We have a few of them listed. We actually use and recommend Sprout Social. It's a very powerful tool. None of these tools do everything. There's still going to be some things that you have to go in and do the old-fashioned way. So, for example, we talked about before the API limitations, right? So there, it may be that you can't do events through Sprout. And there are certain types of posts you're still going to have to go and do natively in the application. But they save you a huge amount of time. One thing that things like Sprout and Hootsuite and Agorapulse will all do, they'll give you the ability to schedule posts, which is extraordinarily helpful. So to give you an idea, our team here at NetWeave is generally working a day ahead. So all of my posts for all of my clients today through midnight were all done before I wrapped up work yesterday. And before I wrap up work today, all of tomorrow's posts will be done. Sometimes I have to go in and make adjustments in real time because something will happen or whatnot, but we're generally working a day ahead. And one of the nice things about Sprout, it'll even tell us what the optimal time for engagement is for the audience. So I can tell them I want to schedule a post for February 14th, and then I can click optimal times, and it'll show me with a system of stars from 1 to 5 what times of the day we've gotten the best engagement in the last 28 days. So it's always a rolling total, so it's a bit of a moving target, but it's very helpful, speeds things up for us a great deal. They'll also allow you to post to multiple platforms at once, and you should never do that. So I could write a post and I can tell it I want it to go to Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and just hit the button and be done with all three. And you would think, oh my God, that would be a godsend. That would save me so much time. And it would, but it would not be doing your social media program a big service. It would be doing it a disservice. And here's why. Each platform is a little bit different about what plays well on the platform. Each audience is a little bit different. And each device or each platform has a different way, maybe that it even formats things. So for example, on Instagram or Facebook, you want, since most people are consuming on phone, you want an image that's taller than it is wide because it consumes more screen real estate. But that image on Twitter will always crop its preview images to be twice as wide as they are high. So if you're putting a long vertical image, it's cropping it for you, and you don't necessarily get control over where it's cropping it or how. So to put things out on multiple platforms at once doesn't work. On Instagram, you need 10, 12 hashtags on a post. If you put 10 or 12 hashtags on a Facebook post, you're going to scare away your audience. We have data that shows that engagement just falls off a cliff after 2 hashtags on Facebook. Facebook just isn't a culture of hashtags. Maybe your post is too long for Twitter. You have a character limit there. So just rubber stamping content onto various platforms, I would never recommend to somebody. Now, Sprout, I know, and some of these others might as well, but we use Sprout, so I know it the best. Sprout will allow you to do what's called schedule and duplicate. So I can write a post for Facebook and then hit schedule and duplicate. It'll schedule it for Facebook, but then it will bring up the exact post again in a new edit window where now maybe I can recrop the picture and put a hashtag on it and send it to Twitter, or maybe I can put a dozen hashtags on it and send it to Instagram, or just change the wording a little bit, or recrop the photo, or even change the photo. So that I recommend because that is a time saver, but you should be customizing your content to the platform it's being sent to. All of these tools have great reporting. Some are better than other. The thing I like most about Sprout is that you can create tags within Sprout, not hashtags, but just tags that you can label content with and then run a report on just that content. So for example, Sun and Fun. We are required to do a certain amount of mentions for various sponsors based on what sponsor package they purchased. So I can tag the content that includes those mentions, and then I can just run a tag report to give them proof of performance. Here's all your mentions, and here's how they performed, and here's what platforms they were on and when they went out, and this is how many people saw them, reacted to them, etc. Super easy to do. I recommend if you run more than 1 or 2 accounts, you look into some of these third-party tools. Some of them are free if you only have 2 or 3 accounts, but even the paid ones, a lot of them have a base plan that's very affordable, and it's a huge time saver for you. So, you know, when you're looking at how much it costs, look at the cost of your time and the opportunity cost of the fact that if you're doing all this manually, that's time you're not doing something else to build the business. So look at it in terms of actual time saved and the opportunity cost, and you'll probably find an affordable solution in one of these that can help you. They're also usually better than the native platforms at visualizing the data. So if you have to report data up the chain of command, they produce some graphs that are easier to understand than maybe some of these native platforms do. And of course, it aggregates it all into one report that you can generate as a PDF and email out to the organization without having to pull screenshots from 4 different platforms and paste them into a document. So if you're doing a lot of different social media, I recommend looking into one of these. And it's not just these 4, there are plenty out there. You can just Google social media management tools or social media analytics services and go through them. And if you have one that you'd like to know if we've ever heard of or know anything about, feel free to email me. We'd be happy to answer anything that we know about. But check out some of these solutions if you haven't already. I know it's majority of you are using a third-party tool, but some of you aren't, and you might want to look into one of these. But the important part is to understand that no tool does it all, and you need to understand the limitations of the tool so you can manually plug the gaps if you had to. So, you know, do understand what it doesn't do as well as what it does. All right, so that brings us to the end, and it's almost 11 straight up, and I think that's my time. But if you do have any other questions, there's my email address on the screen. Feel free to email me about anything that we talked about here today or any social media questions in general. We will do the best we can to help you. If you want us to check out something you've been looking at, or if you can't make heads or tails out of a particular piece of data and want some insight, feel free to email me, and we're happy to help wherever we can. I guess unless there are any questions, Carmen, that's it.
Yeah, we have one more question. Does Facebook algorithms still bury posts that are posted on the 0 or 5 regularly? Example, 10 a.m. or 5:45 p.m. Do any of these third-party tools take into account algorithms monitoring bots?
Right. So there was a time when third-party tools were penalized in the newsfeed algorithm. And it wasn't necessarily even a conscious penalty, but it would do things like it would show you a post and it says posted via Hootsuite, and then underneath it would say 10 more. And you would never see those other 10 posts if you never clicked on that 10 more. They've stopped doing that. We have been assured that third-party penalties no longer apply. But I know for a fact that they don't apply in Sprout because Sprout is a certified Facebook partner. They're also one of the only tools that is a certified partner of both Facebook and Instagram. And man, finding somebody who's an Instagram certified partner is important because that is a wacky API. And even working with a certified partner, we still run into problems on a regular basis. But I can't imagine what it would be like with somebody who wasn't a certified partner. So look for those certified partnerships in your third-party tools, and you should be okay. I will tell you, I don't even think Facebook engineers understand everything about how the newsfeed algorithm works anymore because they've started using an artificial intelligence that's learning and changing as it goes. And I don't think anybody has got all of the information on exactly how it works anymore. But as far as I know, it never actually penalized anything that hit on an even time, like a 0 or a 5. But I personally would always make sure that my posts were scheduled at an odd time just so it didn't look robotic to the people who were consuming the post. If they were looking at the timestamps, I didn't want them to see that I posted at exactly noon every day. So I would post at 11:59. And that wasn't really for anything programmatic so much as it was just my own comfort level and how I want people to perceive that when they look at the timestamp. But these tools do let you schedule at any odd time. So you don't have to worry about that.
All right, that's great. I do have one more slide, if you don't mind clicking,
Sure.
Kevin.
Do I just click on stop showing screen?
No, just click one more time. I think you put it in there for me.
There you go.
So first of all, a couple people said thank you in the chat box.
You are very welcome. Thank you all for being here.
And I want to thank, yes, all of you. I want to thank you, Kevin, and then also everyone who's joined us today. I hope that you learned a lot. I certainly did. We will send a survey to you. I'd love your feedback. And then upcoming programs, just keep an eye on our newsletter, the FAM newsletter, the FAM social media. We will be announcing soon also an in-person program on emergency preparedness in the Fort Myers area. I do have a date. It's April 21st, but we will be getting that information out soon. So join the FAM newsletter and social media like us. There's a lot of great information on there about museums throughout the state that we try to highlight. And again, thank you so much, Kevin. That was fantastic. A lot of information to digest.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for being here. I enjoyed it.